Query strings are values placed at the end of a URL which follow this format. Multiple values are separated by ampersand signs, and the query string arguments are separated from the main part of the URL with a question mark. So a complete URL with query string arguments might look like this, and if you want to pass multiple values, you'd do this, and if you wanted to pass multiples of the same value, you'd normally do something like this, but we'll take a look at how to do that with Flask in a moment.
Let's start with vanilla Flask. To access query string arguments in a Flask endpoint, you first have to import request, and then in any endpoint like this get stores endpoint that returns all the stores in our database, we can do name equal request.args.get and then grab the name query string argument, and this is going to return the value that we associated with that name. You can just use indexing, so you can do request.args and then name in there, but then if the query string argument is not passed, this will raise an error. That's why using .get is better. Also, you can add a second argument, which is the default value that will be returned if name is not sent. By default, that's none, but that would give us some problems. That's because if we don't pass in a default empty string as a default value, then the name variable will be either a string, the name, or none, and then we cannot filter on none when we get to the filtering, which is where we go to next. So if you want to filter the store models, you do store model.query .filter, and then store model.name starts with name. So let me just reformat that so it's a bit easier to see, like that. So now you can see we're grabbing the stores that start with the name that was passed. So if we restart our app, then we can go to Insomnia and we can send the request without any query string arguments. And you can see we get all our 3 stores that I've already created, Teclado, Teclado 2, and not Teclado. So now we're going to grab those that start with tech. And to do so, we can use the query string arguments section here of Insomnia, or just to keep things simple, we can put in a question mark, name equal tech, for example. And then we just get those 2 stores. In vanilla Flask, if you wanted to get multiple values that are passed through a query string, you could just do .getlist, and then that would assume you're getting like something like tag equal furniture and tag equal office. And then you would probably pass in an empty list as a default value there, and this would give you a list of 2 strings, furniture and office. So this is how you'd get 2 values or more of the same query string argument. Most of the time, though, we're just going to be doing something like this.
Let's get to a sponsored segment. This video is sponsored by me. Our REST APIs with Flask and Python course has become really popular, way beyond anything we could have ever imagined. And you guys seem to really like it. So if you want to learn more about developing REST APIs using Flask and Python, as well as Docker and Postgres and a bunch more stuff, then check out the link in the description. Thank you.
I'm also bringing the course up because I wanted to tell you about accessing query string arguments in a Flask REST API that uses Flask-Smorest. Flask-Smorest is a great library for simplifying REST API development with Flask, and it's what we use in the course. If you're completely new to it, then this may not make a lot of sense to you, but do check out the course if you want to learn how to build REST APIs with it. For now, let me show you what this does. Here we define a blueprint which allows us to describe a collection of endpoints, and then the blueprint is associated with a class via a root. So here we've got this /root, and this is the class. The class has methods which have to be named in a very specific way. The get method will be called when we make a get request to this endpoint. Similarly, the post method will be called when we make a post request. We've got a decorator here that defines how incoming data to the post endpoint will be processed. And this decorator here defines how outgoing data will be processed. So we're going to add another one of these to this method to tell it how to process incoming query string arguments. To do that, we go to schemas, and we're going to create a schema, a marshmallow schema called store search query args. You can call it whatever you want, and that is going to have a string. What Flask-Smorest is going to do with this marshmallow schema in a moment is just look at the name query string that's coming, convert it into a string, and give it to us. So in app, let's import that, and then we will copy that and decorate with BLP arguments Put that in there. And now this is going to assume that the name value is incoming in the JSON body of the request, but obviously we want it to be in the query strings. So we do location equal query. And there's a few other locations. I'm going to leave a link to the documentation down below so you can check it out. So now this function gets something like search args. You can call this whatever you want, and that's a dictionary. So we can do name equals search args.get name, and then the empty string as the default value if nothing is passed. And now we can simply filter as we did before. So then we have our filter, and now we can run the app. And then in Insomnia, you can see we get all the stores when we don't pass anything, or if we pass a value in there, we just get those stores there. If you want to see a complete Flask-Smorest REST API that uses query strings, I've put a short one together in a GitHub gist that is linked down below as well.
Alright, that's everything for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you've learned something and you've enjoyed it. Remember to check out our REST APIs with Flask and Python course. The link is in the description. And also hit the subscribe button. I'll see you next time.